Okay.
Oh,
We were
shit.
talking about a popular strength coach that a bunch of us are familiar with that, quote unquote, goes to the strip club 4 days a week. He'll remain nameless, but he is a legend among men. Gentlemen, welcome to the second weekly Team Builder sponsored Cheeky Midweeky. It's a pleasure to have you here. Gang. We were talking in the group off air before we started about internship experiences, and so I thought we'd start that as the first topic. Going around, best experience, worst experience, things you'll never do again. And TK and JJ, bear in mind you both interned for me, so with that starting, TK.
All right. I'll go best experience first was definitely my time in Japan. I think for one, because I remember it was I think I was been there for maybe 8 or 9 days, and Kieran and the rest of the squad gone away for an away game in preseason. Here you're TK, you have
Is it a game or camp? I'm trying to think.
It was a game. It was a game.
It was a weekend, right?
Yeah, it was a game. And Kieran's TK, you have to do a speed session with do a whole Saturday session with these players, which none of them spoke any English at all. And there was no translator. It was me and the Japanese, the low assistant coach who also doesn't speak any English, rugby coach. And so I think that's that really just being thrown to the fire right away. And also having responsibilities from day one, handing me the GPS and the heart rate monitors and was learn this, read this, and this is now your job. Make sure you don't fuck it up kind of thing.
Well, the good news for you is you don't need to warm up to sprint. So I just touched on Steve Mania there.
And then worst experience was my first internship. Not really, no clear direction. I wasn't even allowed to wear. I wasn't even given Arkansas State stuff to wear. So I just wore all my rugby Arkansas State stuff. I wasn't given anything.
So you're coaching on the floor in a Hawaiian shirt and Vans.
I did wear Vans a few times.
And the mid cab.
And what else was wrong with that one? Yeah, just a bravado of be there dumb early, way before lift starts. Boss
just
patting himself on the back for sleeping in the office. He lives close to the facility. He only has one team. It was just
is it your where you just started now that you're running your department? Will you take interns?
Probably in year 2, I think that'll be something I'll try to do. I try to get it paid. That's what I'm trying to do first. I want to be get paid someone, maybe get someone from KU or something like that.
Because that's one thing that Mike Boyle, I've seen him write numerous times, is one of his big regrets was that he waited so long to bring in interns and help, which I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think in year 2 I'll definitely be something I realistically use one now, but in the first year it's just not going to happen. And because of COVID and testing, we got tested today, so we get tested twice a week now for the next 10 months.
Yeah. King.
I was fortunate that I only had one internship experience at Kentucky out in Lexington. And I think the best part of it was just it kicked me off the peak of the Dunning-Kruger curve and into the realization of how much there was to know about how to do this profession well, and all the moving parts that come with it, especially to see it in what's arguably the best college football conference in the country with the SEC.
It's not the Pac-12.
Ew. But probably the worst part of it was that there was definitely a pretty sizable dichotomy in the leadership, and it often felt like I was between divorced parents trying to appease both masters, if you will, and having to do it pretty much alone because the 2 other guys that I came in with within a week's time ended up, one bailed because he thought because he was on his 3rd or 4th internship that he wasn't going to have to do intern duties, and the other left because he got a paid internship at another school, which obviously made more sense to take. So I was pretty much going it alone I had racks that I coached, which was great. But then all the monitoring stuff, collecting RPs, post-practice, setup, breakdown, all of that was pretty much solo. There was one kid that was an undergrad that he helped when he could, but he had classes. So it was definitely
It was like you were the intern for a full roster of like 110.
correct. So whole lot of work, but it worked out pretty well, I'd say, given that the guy that I interned for ended up hiring me on full time at our last stop together, and then ended up being the launching pad for me to end up where I'm at now. So all in all, it was worth it.
Happy days. I mean, you kind of touched on the intern Hunger Games that our friend in Mississippi mentioned off air. I think he said there's like is it a 72-hour period where it's like that scene in Shawshank where they will come in and go fishing to see who's going to break first.
There's definitely that moment.
Oh man.
Oh man.
What about you, Zach? Where you intern? Was it Ohio State that you interned? Or was it your intern, right?
What was that?
Was that your first internship at Ohio State, or was it just a paid internship you did?
So, I mean, I got money in my pocket. You can't say it was whatever it was. I don't know what you would call it, but there was money in my pockets, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It wasn't enough to, wipe my ass with, but it was enough to say I wasn't working for free. I started interning while I was playing at Marshall. I started interning my sophomore, junior year. I would work with the baseball and softball teams in the mornings because they would train in our football facility. And then I would either do my lift by myself or I would hop in like the next football group, train, go to class all morning, do my rehab because most of the time I was fucking hurt. And then I'll go to practice, come back, get home. By the time it's out of study, I was at 8, 9 o'clock. I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. and do it all again. I did that for like 3 years. And then as soon as I finished my 5th year, I was out the entire year. So I coached full time. I did Olympics and football, and then I graduated, and then I went straight to OSU. But that being said, like I wasn't gonna say like names, things like that, because I wasn't sure what I was going to say. But that being said, like when I was there, it was probably the best and the worst experience I probably had because it was so eye-opening in terms of the level of where I came, like the professional side of it being American football and things like that now, because it's so at times ass backwards for everybody else. But that being said, it was definitely the best. Also, for the same reason why it was the worst is because you look at all the things that go into a program like that. I mean, just like what Scott was talking in terms of the hours you work, the expectation from sport coaches, the desk guarding, the babysitting at times, all these little detailed things like getting there. Again, like TK said, dumb early for exactly what, and then all these other things. But then you see kind of the reasons why like they're the best at what they do versus some of these other programs. Yes, recruiting, things like that. But then you go to see other programs, you see like the disorganization, you see the dysfunctionality and things like that of all these different programs. So then again, like hindsight, it gives you like a real perspective of like what like a championship level program looks like in the sport itself. But at the same time, like it's hard to live your like entire career in life for like fourth and goal for the national championship every single day. And I think Will Muschamp said that at South Carolina. We was talking about like why he left Alabama and things like that like years ago. I think it was like right when he left as an analyst or something like that to go to South Carolina. And so that was by far probably the worst and the best, just because the scheduling and understanding the expectations and kind of to be in the game, you got to play the game, so to speak, a little bit in the side of the profession. And then two, the fact that in terms of like education and learning, things like that, like it was just me more of like observing, like nobody like had chalk talks with me. Nobody like gave me book recommendations. There was no like X's and O's, like what it actually takes to drive performance. It's just like, this is what we've done. This is what we always do. This is how we win. This is why we win. This is our culture, all this other stuff. And like, it's all good and well. You got to understand and take bits and pieces of it. But knowing like who I was as a person, as stubborn and hard-headed as an asshole as I can be, I wanted to know the whys and things like that, which also made it good and bad. So it forced me to be able to like, okay, I'm in charge of my own development and self-education and things like that, which is twofold. Like, now made me hyperactive in terms of when it comes to learning versus other strength coaches on that side of the field. So for good, that's kind of how I look at it. It's like the same things I would say were the best were also the worst, if that makes sense.
Mate, the worst nationality to work with in rugby is New Zealand because they win. So it's like you can't tell them that they've done anything wrong, even though there will be some stuff they won in spite of. It's like Tony, where did you intern?
I did my internship at NC State with Bob and Nate.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like a paid member of staff. I know it was not a lot.
So it was like, it was a restricted earnings. I think I was making like $8,000 a year while I was there. Like if you broke it down hourly, I was making cents on the dollar for like how many hours we were working.
But I mean, with your vibrant interior decoration, I'm gonna tell a brief story off air, and sorry, a brief story from off the air on air. One time you took me to your house. It was a room that you were renting, and you were staying in a windowless basement. And your interior decoration was a mattress, a vinyl record player, a hunting knife, and a pump action shotgun, and that was it. And you had your staring wall, so you're not spending on interior decoration. Go on.
Yeah. So when I went to leave grad school to go to NC State, basically I threw away everything I owned except what fit in the backseat of 2001 Pontiac Grand Am, which isn't much. And then I just never really acquired anything thereafter. And I lived, as you said, kind of like a drifter until that's still kind of technically am. I was just living out of your spare room how long ago. So I'm a man of, few worldly possessions.
To the internship, Tony.
To the internship. The best part of the internship definitely was the group of people I got to work with. And the level of athlete I got to coach. I mean, I got lucky that I was there during some championship like runs, both national championships, ACC championships. I was there during an Olympic year. I got to work with an Olympic medalist. I don't think I've worked with in the collegiate setting as high of caliber athletes as I did there, which was really cool. And it was really cool to see them perform at that level. The worst part about it, I think at the end I was technically homeless and living out of like an underground cash only hostel with like a shared room with 4 sets of bunk beds and just me and random strangers, and I was just paying cash for a bed every night. And when you got to wake up at like 3:34 in the morning to be in at 5, like it's really hard to get a room full of people who don't speak English to be quiet while you're trying to go to sleep. But I would say even more so than that was living off of Smucker's, those peanut butter and jelly, like little pies, the Uncrustables. If I never eat another one of those in my life, I'll be more than okay with it.
Is that what gave birth to Keto Tony?
Yeah, we can say that. But I mean, I think that's basically what my diet was for the last 3 months of my internship.
Bro, give me Fun Tony over Keto Tony any day of the week.
Getting those wangs on Sunday.
Hell yeah. What you boys eating for Super Bowl food?
Bruh, deep dish pizza.
Crusted lasagna.
Yeah.
TK shaking his head. Terrence, what are you eating?
Shaking his head because he'd be in the toilet after that.
Yeah. Lactose intolerant gang. I'll probably go wings.
Yo, Zachary?
I'll probably do wings. I'll definitely have a steak though. But just for Tony, I'm probably gonna bring some Uncrustables home from work and I'm gonna crush those at halftime. Maybe get some wing slices,
How many do you think you could eat?
I eat 2 at work daily, so I know I can at least do 2.
Dude, I would do
Finally, the secret to that Herculean rippling physique is revealed.
Oh, I think the stress of the accumulated stress over the last 2 years.
Bro, your hairline's healing itself.
It's healing.
COVID.
I'm one of the most self-deprecating people there are, and I'm the strength coach's Benjamin Button.
JJ, internships.
I was pretty lucky, so I guess the only one I did was with you guys. So
You only got a metabolic illness.
that hasn't onset yet. So
I love
I'm
that
alright.
he's
There's
saying
no
that
downside.
we tried to give him diabetes.
No, the best bit was definitely, it's like TK said, it's the responsibility. So, like you guys gave me the bigs in the weight room, and then with Eric let me like look after the basketball, men's basketball. I mean, probably the only downside I can think of is
the
being
NBA now.
ragdolled round a football pitch by none other than Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, not the comedian, the football player.
Yeah.
What was the hardest?
Jim, you've got Bill Murray from the Patriots, and you've got Nate Knight that you can say you've trained. I mean,
yeah, that's how it works, isn't it?
Hell yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, that's why I flew to Argentina on 2 days' notice. They said, "Oh, you might be there a week," and I quit my job. And I was like, "Fuck it! Once it's on my resume, you're not taking it away from me." Ain't you a mile, brother?
Kier, give us your internship experience.
Well, fucking, it took a while. I was that terrible of a coach. Like, I graduated in 2008 and I didn't get an internship until 2010. But I sulked at the time because I wanted a senior team internship, didn't want to work with youth athletes, and I ended up working in the youth system. But, you know, you kind of, it's a little bit more forgiving. You can make your mistakes away from the eyes that are on the first team. Whereas if you make a mistake with the first team athlete and you fuck them up, you're going to be gone. And that kind of what I did with TK and JJ is what happened to me, which is you just get thrown in the deep end, figure it out, because what we tried to do at William & Mary is if you're putting people in a situation where they only, do piss tests, clean up the gym and stuff like that, that's what they're going to be qualified to do at the end of it. And I've always kind of thought it's like they say, oh, you dress for the job that you want. You have to work for the job that you want as well. So mate, I used to have some serious insecurities when I was an intern because I thought, I've walked away from my job and my home. And if I don't get a job at the end of it, my life is going to be over. So I used to tell myself, like, every day, you're an unpaid coach, you're not an intern. And I mean, they were lovely guys, the first team interns. But in my mind, I would step on their faces if I had to get a job. And man, I was there for a year. Tons and tons of coaching. But I can't remember if I told you or not, but like the lowest point was, it was completely unpaid. It was full-time for a year, living in the most expensive city in England. And I was living above a pub. And I think I was working 3 part-time jobs, borrowed $5,000 from my dad to do it. And I had a friend. So I used to do sports massage as well. And I had a friend that said, oh, come to my work. We've got a list of people that want sports massage, all this kind of shit. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Negotiated the price. And business mistake. I said, oh, pay me when you get there. So I fucking lug this massage table across London on the underground, on the subway. I had to spend money to get there, and I got there, and it was 2 people. So I ended up losing money on it and half a day. Fuck, I had to cry to myself that day. Which is why I always used to say to the interns, I was like, there's 2 kinds of interns. Ones that are miserable and think about quitting, and fucking liars. But yeah, that was my intern. Luckily I got a job at the end of it. I got like a Tony Carney job where they paid me, I think it was $5,000 less than the poverty line in London. And I signed up for another year and promptly bent over and got more of the same. Yeah, bro. All right. Tech. Let's pick. We got 10 minutes. So let's go TK. Technology. We mentioned it off air a little bit. What are the new technologies that you're going to be rolling out with your athletes, and what are the questions that you're going to be asking yourself that you want the answers to?
I think the only one part of getting this year is going to be a force plate. That's kind of what I'm pushing for the most. A big one's going to be looking at kind of how like effects of game and travel affects, along with neuromuscular effects from surface changes. So some teams play on turf, other teams play on grass, and it will flip-flop as well in training. And so ideally, I want to get a force plate, and I want to jump. Let's say I want to jump twice a week, every gym session. So every Wednesday or Saturday, whatever gym sessions ever fall on. And kind of build a profile for each one in terms of looking at some eccentric D-SARF, D-word, looking at some kind of movement depth, looking at some landing asymmetries as well. Especially because I have a couple, this is women's soccer, so I have plenty of people who've had a torn ACL at least once. And so looking at that, looking if there's any trends from recurrent ACL injuries, some of those athletes and stuff over year, 2 year, things like that. Over the course of the season.
The proprioceptive deficit, I think, is 2 years on an ACL.
Yeah.
It's like a big difference between return to play, return to performance kind of thing. Zach, the savior of Mississippi football. Talk to me about tech, bro.
I don't know. I think the correct term is pariah, but but in terms of technology, I mean, honestly, we're at a place where we're very fortunate in the accessibility and funds we have of what we're doing. So, I mean, it's not even so much of what we want to get done. It's more of like what you said. It's finding out what's important and what questions we actually try and answer. I mean, we have 4 different VBT systems, so it's like, what do we actually try to answer? So for me, handling all of our stuff, it's really trying to sell the fact that our football staff values analytics and tactical communication, even though they have no idea that's what it is, but that's what they're trying to get to. So understanding GPS and how we can relate what we know about it to what they are trying to accomplish and help answer their questions. And then 2, the force plate, basically showing our coaches and our staff and organization that there's an inverse relationship between volume and intensity, that working harder is not always better.
JJ, you, I think, worked at a college in the UK that's probably got more toys and technology than most professional sports clubs. So what did you have access to, and what were the big things that you tried to do with that at Wellington?
So we had the 1080 sprint with force plates, force decks, gym aware. What else did we have? We had something else. Oh, in Muscle Lab. To be fair, we put all our effort. Oh yeah, we had we had an Athos suit as well, didn't we? It was dumb, but I mean, I definitely I wouldn't have bought half of the things anyway. But that's a story for a different day. With the force plate, we generally just went down the force plate kind of avenue because you can get so much for what you do. One CMJ because it's so much data. So we were generally trying to catch trends from an 8-year-old all the way up to an 18-year-old, and then essentially what we can do then is
trend, or more like a accumulation of fatigue.
Developmental trend. So actually see that what we're implementing is above the maturation rate of youth athletes anyway. Because a lot of coaches will say, "Oh, I've made an improvement," and it's like, "Yeah, it's called fucking puberty." So we wanted to always try and push ourselves above that trend to make sure we're actually doing something different. And then, I mean, 1080 was a useful toy, but it was a toy. It's not feasible when you're trying to push 400 kids through a weight room.
Yeah.
In the one-to-one scenario, it's fine, and if you're a school with a big budget and small groups, you can use it. It was useful on return to play stuff.
In what regard, like overspeed stuff?
Yeah, so like we can use it for overspeed stuff, and then we used it just to try and get above previous metrics on our return to play athletes.
Yeah.
Not only in obviously just pure outputs, which is what you'd see in like speed gates and stuff, but actually how they get in there, step by step.
Yeah. Well, I always struggle with that is there's obviously the intensity piece to return to play, but then I realized obviously in Japan there's a volume piece to it as well, which is that they can do it a couple of times is great, but if they're going back into an environment where they're going to have to do it again and again and again and again, what people think is going to be a fairly reasonable short return to play ends up you have to tack a few weeks onto it, or be incredibly aggressive and like chase intensity and volume at the same time. That was what I struggled with.
Yeah, I think in the high school setting, coaches probably get away with putting them in the deep end early, probably too early, too quickly.
Yeah,
because they're teenagers and they just bend and bow to horrendous training.
Honestly, I never encountered, I don't think, an athlete in the youth system at London Wasps that needed more conditioning, because they all want their pound of flesh. Like they all play for school, county, area, national team, pro team, and then if you're at a private school like Harrow, bro, they used to do like 2 hours of PE a day at Harrow. So like how Billy Vanapola was 150 kilos is beyond me.
All the wings.
Right. Yeah. Apparently the Domino's guy used to come to him personally in his door. What is the best athlete story that you can tell on air, Scott?
So the best athlete story?
Yeah.
Man.
Is it Poop Johnson?
That's up there. That was a little before my time at Kentucky, but yeah, I probably can't even tell that one because I wasn't there for it. But the one that immediately came to mind was my first summer at Tulsa, and we had football rolling, obviously, and then my women's tennis team came in a couple of weeks into the summer, and it was a group of like 4 girls maybe out of the 7 or 8 that were on the team that were there, and it was all informal. We had a workout time, but obviously they all didn't have to be there. And it was like my second week, and one of the girls texted me and she said she wasn't gonna be able to make it. And I said, everything okay? Like, what's going on? She's like, well, I ate too much food and it's I'm too full to work out. And I said, well, we can adjust the workout, come on over. And she tells me, well, the thing is I'm still eating right now. And it was like 10 minutes before the workout that she had done that. And that was just like my holy shit, athletes really don't give a fuck moment of her just saying, yeah, I'm going to keep eating and not show up for workout. So that's one that immediately came to mind. I'm sure there's numerous others that after we hang up, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a way better story. But that's
I got a fucking spicy one for you off air. even I'm not going to share this one off air. Let's wind it up, boys. Appreciate you being on it, and yeah, go by Team Builder. Cheers.